Zambia's energy sector plays a pivotal role in the nation's development, but this particular crucial sector has recently suffered challenges such as electricity deficit that is largely can be attributed to over-reliance on hydro generation. And these particular challenges have also been exacerbated by climate change vulnerabilities. And the question that we ask today is, are the independent power purchase agreement that the nation's power utility ZESCO is signing sufficient to be able to address these issues? This is the People's Space, and my name is Wenson Mavor, and I am privileged today to host the technical consultant or expert, if you like, from Twinkle Consulting Engineers, and this is none other than Engineer Brighton Mwaipopo. It is a pleasure to host you, Mr. Mwaipopo.
Thanks, Wendy, and good to be here with you.
Okay, so let's just kickstart our conversation for today. Obviously, you know, when we talk to, in fact, let me just get this out of the way. Most of the engineers that I've met, you know, I remember at one time there was a debate between the journalists and some engineers who said, you can't call me by my first name, you have to add the word engineer. So I just want to understand, is this something that is in your EIZ Act, or what is this whole thing?
Yeah, nothing special, Wendy, but it's a title, just like you have a medical doctor, you have a lawyer. Yeah, so just to identify our profession, I think it's mandated that we be addressed as such. So you can call me Bright, you can call me engineer. It's one and the same thing, but yes, you're right. It's actually a title for the profession.
Okay, wonderful. So that is actually out of the way. And I agree with you that, you know, it brings credibility to the profession, which obviously plays a crucial role when it comes to what it is that we do in the country. But beyond the energy sector and what you do, you know, coming from Twinkle Consultancy, who is Brighton Mwaipopo?
Yeah. Thanks, Wendy. And good morning to the listeners. Yeah, my name is Engineer Brighton Mwaipopo, as indicated, coming from Twinkle Consulting Engineers. I've been practicing engineering for the past 2 decades, so to speak. Yeah. Before I became an engineer, I grew up in Matero. I went to Chitanda Primary School, where I did my primary education at Chitanda Primary School. Then I crossed over to Matero Boys, where I did my junior secondary school, and later on went to Hillcrest National Technical School, which I believe you know.
Yeah.
And did my senior secondary school there. And then from Hillcrest, I went to the Copperbelt University, where I did my bachelor's degree in engineering. In a nutshell, this is Bright Mwaipopo, and this is where the journey of becoming an engineer started from after I obtained my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, specialized in power systems, as you call it, energy in a nutshell.
Interesting. At least I'm talking to somebody who's from Matero as well, you know, where I also come from, and I'm also a product of Matero Boys. So I feel at home already. But before we get into other stuff, has engineering always been your dream? Because, you know, a lot of people have this perception or misconception that engineering is a hard profession. You know, it's for those people that, you know, are academically focused, those that are always top of the class.
Yeah. Well, it's just like any other profession. You need to have passion for what you're doing. If you're going to be an astute journalist, you need to have passion for journalism. Yeah. Asking me whether engineering has always been my profession of choice, I don't really think so. You know, I'm happy that I'm talking to someone who grew up in the same wood as I did, which is Matero. Yeah. Growing up as a kid, I was not so sure of what I wanted to become. I spent most of my time with my mom trading at the market. I think probably for as long as 30 years or so. Yeah, from the time that I was a kid up until the time that I graduated. So that tells you the kind of environment I grew up in. Yeah, but also on the other side, my dad worked for an engineering firm. He worked for a company called Lusaka Engineering Company, called Lenco then, yes. And he worked in heavy duty engineering section. So time and again, I would check up on him. He would take me along as he would be doing his work. I would visit his working place. Yeah. So probably you would say that that could have sparked the interest into technical works, but not so sure if I understood what was involved in engineering. Yeah. But then later on, as I was growing, as I was navigating through, I later started to understand what engineering was all about. And I ended up picking up this course. I have no regrets. Given chance, I'll still pick this as a career of choice.
Interesting. So, what exactly do you do in your spare time? What are your hobbies? Because you engineers are difficult people, eh?
Yeah, well,
You may find that your hobby is going to Long Acres Mall and studying the bridge. You never know.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. So, well, engineers probably are said to be antisocial because we spend a lot of our time with the factory, working out things. Yeah, so you don't have really time to yourself. So you find that your social time is quite limited, so to speak. But that does not mean that we don't socialize, So given chance, we do that, yeah. So in my private time, I have a number of things that I do, but you'd be interested to know that I'm passionate about farming.
Yeah.
So besides being an engineer, I'm a full-time farmer. So I've been doing this for quite some time. So yeah, other than doing this, I also do the agriculture side of things.
Okay. Do you watch football?
Watching football, no. But I would tell you that actually I played a lot of soccer when I was growing up. If I didn't become an engineer, possibly I would have been a soccer star. Yeah, and it always got me in trouble with my dad. And as he would tell me that, football would not take you anywhere. So yeah, I had to switch off and focus on the academics. Yeah. Yeah. So once in a while I do, but I'm not a soccer fanatic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before we get into our conversation, again, I'll get back to, there's this thing I've always heard about engineers, people sometimes say engineers, when I say you people, I mean engineers. So those that are watching should know if I say you people, when I'm talking to Engineer Mwaipopo here, I'm referring to all you engineers watching here. So when they say that, you people are reactive, okay, case in point, the issue to do with the Long Acres Bridge, okay, politics aside in that issue, but from a technical aspect, EIZ came and did what I thought they did. And I'm not asking you to speak for them, but I'm just citing as an example, gave their professional opinion. And there are other infrastructure projects that, sometimes we see, like I remember in, is it Libala? There was a building that collapsed and killed a man. There are all these things that we hear. And some people would ask, where are the engineers in this country? Why does something have to happen before we get to hear from the engineers? Why are they not there before?
Yeah. So maybe let me take you back to where we started from. You asked me, why do we always insist that we be addressed by our titles as engineers? Yeah. Just like any other profession, there are so many people on the market who are masquerading to be professionals when they are not. Okay. So anybody can come and say, I'm a journalist, but is it true you're a trained journalist? Okay, so we need to get the right staff to do the right job. We have an obligation to provide the service to the community. Okay, so if the community is raising concerns regarding our profession, it means that true, we haven't done as good as we should have. Yeah. So talking about a case in point, I may not have the full details, but the fact that a concern was raised, it's a matter that requires attention. But I'm glad to tell you that actually EIZ was very strong on that matter, gave a position, but then you say you can give a position, there's also another part where other players are required to do their part. Okay, so it is a statutory requirement that when we do works, they must meet the requirements or expectations of society, failure to which is an issue that must be accounted for. So yeah, there's lots of good things that engineers have done, but just like in any other profession, there could be one or two bad seeds in the space that must be taken care of.
Okay. Interesting. Let's now get into our conversation. Obviously, we're looking at the energy sector, and we have to start from where, the significant portion of our power comes from, the Kariba Dam itself. If you look at the current drought conditions that the country is experiencing, what are some of the specific technical challenges are there, when it comes to keeping power hydro generation at peak levels?
Yeah, so I know there's a lot of information out there in the public regarding the Kariba Dam.
We're even hearing that the thing is now shut down.
Well, possibly yes, because if you look at the water flow in the Zambezi River, actually there's no water flowing. Yeah, so there's a lot of conversation around that issue. But just to amplify your thoughts is that it's not just the Kariba that is affected. We also have the Kafue River, where we've got two of our major power stations, the Kafue Gorge Upper and Kafue Gorge Lower. They are equally affected. But when you hear the conversation in the public space, we are only talking about one power station. And yet we've got these two other power stations which are equally adversely affected. So when we're talking about the issue of the drought, we should actually talk about it holistically, look at all other assets that have been affected. And well, we can use the Kariba as a case in point, yeah. But as we talk about the Kariba, bear in mind also that there are these other facilities that have been affected, yeah. Talking about the drought, a drought is an unplanned thing. It's an occurrence that can happen due to, well, God's wisdom. In his own infinite wisdom, he knows when he blesses and when he does not. Yeah. So if we are faced with a situation where we do not have water, there has to be a plan B. Yeah. And, well, engineering is a science. It's not a wishful career. It's something that you plan, project, forecast. So even as you are running a power system, you must know that your key vital resource to a hydropower station is water. So you need to manage this critical resource prudently. You need to know how much you have. You need to know how long it will last, how much power it can generate. So that being the case, you know that some of the possible risks that you can hit into is a drought. So you should, if you do your risk matrix, you should be able to know and ask yourself, what can go wrong? And what if it goes wrong, what do we do? Yeah, so bringing it back home to the case of Kariba, it's a known fact. It's not just the power sector that has been hit. The agriculture sector also has been hit, right? Yeah, so we should be able to say, in an event that we find ourselves in such a space, what do we do? Okay, so yeah, Kariba is in a very difficult space. I think by now it possibly it's shut down. I may not have the facts, but by now I think it's shut down. And it's simple. We've depleted the water that was allocated to us, and the rains haven't been good to us. So in an event that we find ourselves in such a space, what do we do? So we should be able to have a plan B, because energy is very key to an economy. We say energy is to an economy what blood is to a human body. So you can't have a human body without blood. Okay. So if you know that blood is that critical, at every hour, every day, every year, you must have enough blood running in the body. Yeah. So yeah, the issue of, if I heard you right, the issue of Kariba is a challenge. It's a national challenge. You can see the adverse effects that it's had on our economy. And yeah, I hope we've learned our lesson. But truth be told, with good planning, like you were asking me earlier on, good strategies and forecasting, we should be able to ride through such challenges and keep the economy together.
You talked about depletion of water at the Kariba, and we would like to find out, water being the key ingredient to our power generation. How can water be managed successfully, at Kariba? You being a technocrat, what are some of the technological advances do you think we can employ to be able to improve the water management itself?
Okay, it's basically, without so much thinking about technology, it's basically logic involved. I'll give you an example of a car. You know that a car runs on fuel, right? And you know that without fuel, your car won't get you anywhere. right? And when you fill up your tank in your car, you know that it will be able to push me through 600 kilometers for argument's sake, right? Yeah. So at the beginning of every year, okay, or every month, you know how much fuel you run with, and you must plan. Should you not have enough fuel for your car, you should be able to adjust your routines and say, with the fuel that I have, I should be able to live a lifestyle like this so that I can ride through the year. Okay. I was just giving an example so that I can drill that on and bring it down home. The same can be said about managing water in a vessel like the Kariba Dam. Okay. So at the beginning of every year, Zambezi River Authority, who are the owners of the vessel, do allocate to each country. By the way, for the sake of our viewers, Kariba Dam is actually co-shared between Zambia and Zimbabwe. It's not wholly for Zambia, but it's shared between these two countries. And it's actually managed by an independent body who are Zambezi River Authority, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So at the beginning of each year, the Zambezi River Authority, ZRA, would allocate to each member how much water they can utilize in a dam, okay? And that is based on how much water is available, okay? And that is also based on how good the rains could have been in the year before, okay? Because you can only allocate based on what is available, right? Yeah. So at the beginning of each year, each country gets its allocation. So much is for Zambia, the other portion is for Zimbabwe, and you run with that, okay? So like I was saying, it's like you're running a vehicle with a full tank at the beginning of the month. So you manage yourself to say, this fuel must take me up to the end of the year. Okay, if I run out of fuel in between, I will have to find other ways and means of getting myself around, getting to work and dropping kids at work and the like. All right, so managing the Kariba Dam, just like any other vessel, like I told you, the problem isn't just at Kariba, but it's also with the other power systems, like power stations, like you've got Kafue Gorge, you've got the Itezi. These are power stations that have dams, which are reservoirs, which can keep the water so that it's used when it's needed, okay? So in your reservoir, if you do not have water, you cannot run your stations. So it's like you have a car that does not have fuel, okay? So asking your question, how can we use technology to manage better? Maybe we should be saying, how best do we manage the water resource that God has blessed us with? Okay, so in each year, praying and hoping that we've got sufficient rain, okay?
But again, you see, Engineer Mwaipopo, this issue, I'm a Christian, okay? I believe in prayer. But honestly, where we are with the education, with the knowledge, with the science, should we just entirely depend on rain? Look at how our friends are diversifying their energy portfolios in different countries. What stops us from doing the same?
Yeah, so just to agree with you, when I say praying, I'm just using the word loosely. Maybe the word I should be saying hoping or wishing that we have enough water. Like I told you, engineering is a science. So it's not something that you probably reduce to prayer alone. And yeah, so it's a science. So you make do with what is available. And actually, we make do with what nature throws at us. So to agree with you further is that even as you are faced with drought, there should be a way to find other ways of generating power other than relying on hydro. Okay, so I was basically saying, like, look, based on what you have, so what can you do? I mean, look, these are assets that have been built at a great cost, okay? If you look at the figures, I think in the current setup, you will have to wait for 10 years for you to build a similar facility as the Kariba or the Kafue Gorge Law. So these are assets that you can't just brush aside and ignore, okay? But they need fuel, which is water, for them to run, okay? So as you harvest your water around, we should actually be thinking, how best can we harvest sufficient water so that we can fill up the dam, okay? And if we do fill up the dam, then we know that we are energy secure because we are going to have enough water to generate power. And power is actually a very critical component to the economy. Like I said, Energy is to an economy what blood is to a human body. So as we do so many other activities that are dependent on water, as we harvest our water, we should actually bear in mind that this is a resource that we must efficiently manage because it's needed downstream to generate the power which we critically need. Now, going back to your question, now you're faced with a situation where the water that you're supposed to harvest isn't there. So what do? Okay, so there should be alternatives. So in the recent past, there's a lot of conversation around renewable energy. But even before we talk about renewable energy, we also have other traditional sources of energy, which is coal. Okay, coal is a robust source of energy, and we're endowed with a lot of it. It's a long conversation, but I can tell you that actually industries world over are driven using thermal energy. Okay, so other than hydro, we should also harness coal. God, in His infinite wisdom, blessed us with coal. So what are we doing about it? Just like other countries have been blessed with oil. Okay, so other than water, we also have coal. I can also add to say we have uranium. Okay, these are resources that are here in this country, and these are resources that are needed to generate power. Okay, now we're talking of renewable energy, which is solar, wind, and geothermal. Okay, so in addition to these, there are these other traditional sources of energy, which have got their own advantages and disadvantages. But we have these resources endowed with us, and if we made good use of them, we shouldn't be going through what we're going through at the moment.
We will definitely get a little bit on, especially some of the alternatives that we can look at as we talk about cushioning the current power deficit that Zambia is grappling with, that is being compounded by, the climate change and other natural adverse effects. You are watching The People's Space. We will come back after this short break.
Climate change has emerged as one of the most pressing issues in Zambia affecting socio-economic development. The country is already experiencing climate-induced hazards, which include drought and dry spells, seasonal and flash floods, and extreme temperatures. Some of these hazards, especially the droughts and floods, have increased in frequency and intensity over the past few decades and have adversely impacted on the food and water security, water quality, energy, and sustainable livelihoods of rural communities.
Welcome back to The People's Space. Today we are focusing on the energy sector, and of course we are looking at the current challenges that faces the sector, but at the same time exploring some of the alternatives that can be implemented to be able to address some of the challenges that we mentioned before we even went on a break. And my guest is Engineer Brighton Mwaipopo. Engineer Brighton Mwaipopo, obviously there's one thing, that we did not look at when we were starting this conversation, and a lot of people may be wondering after hearing that engineers are actually social people as opposed to the perception that we have that they're always engrossed in calculations and, confined to themselves. So some of the people would love to know, is Engineer Mwaipopo married?
Yeah.
Or is he on the market?
Yeah, Wendy, yes, I'm a married person. I have 3 children. My oldest daughter is 21. And then the second born is a son who's 16. Oh, sorry, my firstborn is 19. Then my son is 16, about to turn 16. And then I have a daughter also who's in grade 8. So I'm married with 3 children. Yes, they get upset when I say kids. So for the purposes of peace, I'll say children.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, obviously there you have it. Engineer Mwaipopo is off the market. But hey, let us talk about what is still fresh and a concern on the market to the many people, the majority of Zambians. Earlier on, I had asked you about, the flyover bridge at Long Acres. Let's look at another, again, issue that sparked conversation and interesting debate. the issue of the Society Park building there. Right now, currently closed due to safety concerns. And again, the question that was asked by the majority of people is, where were the engineers? Because clearly that looks to be an engineering issue to the majority of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Wendy, thanks. This is a matter that is of public concern, and it keeps coming up. And as far as I know, I think the asset now is closed. I think hotels that were operating around there, businesses that were operating around there have been asked to vacate so that the problem can be sorted out. Look, engineers don't work in a vacuum. Our core mandate is actually to improve people's lives, okay, through the solutions that we are giving to society. So if I'm going to design and put on the market this mic, okay, the mic must live by its intended purpose. It shouldn't go out there and start killing babies. Then it's not a mic. It's not fit for human consumption. So these things that we design and build, they are not a fly-by-night assets. They stay with us for a long time. So when we build like the facility where we are here today, in the next 20, 30 years, this facility will still be with us. And we would love to see that 30 years on, the structure is still standing and meeting the purpose that it was intended to serve. Yeah. So coming back to Society Park, I mean, we all know the building. I think at one point it was one of the best buildings in this country. I think later on there were renovations, improvements that were done to it. I think this is where now we have this challenge that came up. But you heard EIZ was very strong about it. Then President Ebong issued a statement and actually condemned to say there's a problem. So the fact that the engineering body raised the concern, it means that whoever the developers are or the owners of the assets are needed to rectify that situation. What we should do at all costs, what we intend to do as engineers whenever we do these solutions is that we try to avoid as much as is possible to have a calamity. We shouldn't have a solution that eliminates life, then it's not fit for purpose. Yeah. So talking about the structure in point, I think it's in black and white. The engineering mother body gave a statement and condemned the structure. But then sometimes the decision makers, the owners of the facilities, would not act at the right speed. So you find that people would drag and there'll be so much talk around an issue instead of acting. I think one of the weaknesses that we are grappling with as a society is that there's too much talking and less of doing. So when we are faced with such challenges, it's not a time to start finger pointing, but actually it should be a time to quickly find a solution like they've done now to avoid the calamity falling on us. But before we even do that, right from the beginning, like the Japanese would say, do it right the first time.
So for me, I clearly see a case of maybe miscommunication. Oh, okay, I wouldn't say miscommunication. Maybe, for lack of a better term, I would say engineers are not really involved. It's like I can do a project separately, and then if it goes wrong, it's the engineers that get the blame. So don't you think maybe your act needs to be amended to be able to make it mandatory that even if it's not the contract for Twinkle Consulting engineers, but through the mother body, we involve engineers that come and conduct independent inspections to ensure that it is done right the first time.
You're very right, actually. And just to agree with you further is that, you see, these projects, right from inception up to completion or commissioning, there are various stages that are involved. So one would ask a question to say, at what point was a problem missed? Why wasn't it detected at the right time? Yeah. So, look, like I'd said, so many people who masquerade and say, I'm an expert in XYZ, when actually they are not. Yeah. But there are enough laws to prosecute these matters. EIZ has enough laws to actually punish the perpetrators. Probably what could be missing is actually they shouldn't just end at EIZ. They should go further to the courts. And whoever the culprits are must be punished so that you end this bad trend. Okay? It's not just the Society Park. You hear of so many bridges that are getting washed away. You hear of roads that actually they fell before the lifespan that they were intended to save. So these are public assets, by the way, these are public assets that are built using public resources. So when such issues happen, I think the law must visit the culprits and deal with them in the interest of protecting public resources, but then also deterring the would-be offenders. So we basically need to tighten the relationship between the engineers' mother bodies and the courts of the law, defending the interests of the public by punishing those that are failing to deliver quality products. And in many instances, it's not just local engineers. There are also foreign engineering firms and professionals that are involved. Just because someone comes with a certain paper or race, we tend to think they're an expert. But when you get to see the products that they're delivering to our public, you discover that actually they're below par. So they're traceable. Their records and the owners of the projects know who built what, who designed what. So if there are such failures, let's visit them in the interest of the public and prosecute the offenders so that we can set the record straight and avoid a repeat of such. We're lucky that nothing bad has happened so far. So let's hope that a solution quickly is done before disaster strikes, and then we should save lives.
About 4 days ago or so, there was a national blackout. And unfortunately, sad messages have continued pouring in from different people to media platforms, indicating the loss of many lives that were on life support in various critical institutions such as hospitals. Is there a technological upgrade that we can take advantage of to address such greed instabilities? And maybe is there a policy, perhaps, approach that could be considered to be able to address this issue?
Yeah. Thanks, Wendy. I learned of the same through communication from the National Power Utility. But this is not the first time that we have experienced a blackout. I think if you remember, since you are a fellow adult, I'm sure you remember in the past that we've had such. They happen. Even as we run these systems as engineers, we know that there's a possibility that such a thing can happen. But what is important is what you're asking. What are the interventions that can be put in place to save lives? If you are to check at critical installations like hospitals, you'll discover that there's actually more than one source of power. There'll be power from the national grid. There'll be power from a standby generator. Okay, there could even be power from solar. Yeah, so all these interventions are meant to give what you may call an interruptible power supply, power that is there throughout. Okay, so a failure from one source shouldn't really incapacitate the institution. We should be able to switch on to the other sources and run. So if you speak to the experts, the technical experts, they'll tell you that actually the institutions that you're mentioning, they have gensets, they have got solar. If they don't, these are some of the things that must be done, because you know that I am running a sensitive service providing system and I need power supply all the time. So that being the case, other than receiving power from the national utility, I should have what you call a standby emergency power supply. I should also invest in another source so that should any of these fail at any time, I should switch on to the other two sources of supply. And so talking about what you're saying, I would want to believe that these national critical institutions have these things. But the question is that, are they functional? Are they in the right form such that when they are needed, they can quickly be available and provide the service. So maybe that's where the engineers or the technical staff from these institutions need to handshake with engineers from the national utility and see to it that actually at any point they should be able to have power supply 24/7.
Let's now turn our attention to the issue of power purchase agreements. Again, another important component of energy governance in this country. From an expert point of view, transparency is the issue that often dominates conversation when it comes to power purchase agreements. In your view, and we know that transparency has been said to be very crucial to ensuring that there's a mutual benefit situation for both government and institutions involved in these agreements. What can be done? Is there any regulatory recommendation you can make to ensure that transparency when it comes to PPAs is enhanced?
Yeah. Thanks, Wendy. I'm glad you've brought out this issue, but I'll be very clear with you that, look, these are public affairs. These are public matters. And public matters must be handled with utmost transparency. Okay. So just like we insist on every procurement that it must be done in a transparent manner because you want to get value for the money, the same philosophy, the same principle is applicable to the power purchase agreement. You are basically transacting on behalf of the public, and the owners of the money need to know. You are not just going to shop as you wish, but you should be able to explain to the people that your one kwacha has bought so much service. Okay, so issues of transparency are a no compromise issue. So many times you hear of stories years later, after agreements have been done, then you start hearing, no, this was mishandled. Or you tend to hear of, no, the buyer, the off-taker is actually owing the producer so much. So when you're looking at it's not just a one-point solution. You look at it as a complete cycle in the value chain. If I'm going to buy power from producer Wendy, who's an IPP, I should buy it at a price that will allow me sell that power, make a profit, and be able to pay you. Because if I'm going to buy power from you at a price that kills me, how then do I make the profit? How do then I pay the dividends to the shareholders? Eventually, I'll fail to pay you for the power that you've supplied. Okay? So when we are looking at these matters, we should look at them in complete view instead of just looking at them from a narrow viewpoint. So when you are negotiating these things on behalf of the public, because I think the absolute uptake in this country is the national power utility. So when you are negotiating these matters on behalf of the public, we should always bear in mind that it's public affairs that you're handling. And such being the case, you should hold them or discuss them with utmost level of transparency. The issue for me is that, look, I mean, it makes no sense for you to purchase power, for argument's sake, at 22 cents, and then you go and sell it at 4 cents. So in between, the loss that you've incurred, who covers for that? So when you are negotiating for these things, you must be alive to the fact that you are selling power at a particular price. So as you buy, you must buy power that you can afford to pay for. Otherwise, both parties will lose out. So this is why I'm saying it's a matter that must be treated with utmost level of transparency, because these are public affairs. And if you fail to pay these IPPs, you find ourselves in a situation where they'll stop supplying you power. So what have you achieved? Or you have these matters end up in courts. So instead of providing a service to the public, you are now busy battling it out in the courts of law. So to answer your view, yes, matters of transparency are a no compromise. Just the same way we do any other public procurement procedure, the same must be extended to PPAs. Be transparent, let every party know. And whoever is transacting on behalf of the public must always know that you are holding this space on behalf of the public. It's not a private matter. You are actually making this decision on behalf of the public. One day or the other, you'll be required to account for the decisions that you're making. And as such, you should be proud to say, I negotiated a good deal for the public, and it has served the best interests of the public.
As we get to wrap up our conversation, obviously earlier on you referred to some of the alternatives that can be considered, for example, solar and backup generators and all these things. I would like to tap your mind. We live in a country that has been environmentally deemed favorable when it comes to harnessing other alternative sources of energy, solar being one of them. What are some of the technical challenges and potential solutions for integrating large scale solar power into Zambia's national grid?
Yeah. Well, the issue of integrating solar to the grid is an option on the table. I think, truth be told, there are no restrictions. But there's a limit as to how much you can take. It's not an open-ended check. Okay, just like any other road has a limit to how much vehicles it can take. So similarly, the power system has got limits. You can only load it with so much. Yeah, but I think where we are now, there's enough room. So many pronouncements, so many engagements have been made. Probably what is missing is actualizing those engagements, those promises into complete solutions. Yeah, because if Wendy is going to come and say, I'm going to provide you with 2,000 megawatts of power, okay, then Nyimbiri comes and says, I'm going to provide you with 8,000 megawatts of power. So you start saying, wait. Wendy is giving me 2,000, Nyimbiri is giving me 8,000. I'm at 10,000, meaning that I've already depleted the available capacity to absorb, okay? But then if Wendy doesn't deliver, you're actually blocking other people that could have delivered even a 500 megawatts, which would have made the difference. So what is missing in all these good ideas is the actualization of the thoughts. So whoever is talking of providing, for argument's sake, 300 megawatts, give us a time frame. At what time do you think it will be available? So that we take it up and start looking at how much extra room is available to accommodate other players. But then if it's just going to be on the table that Wendy promised a 2,000, 10 years later, it's still on, on paper that we are waiting for a 2,000. Problems are not waiting for you. So I think the challenge that we normally face as technical staff is that these good ideas don't get implemented in good time. And as you take long to implement these, other challenges creep in. God forbid, what happens if there's not enough rain this year? Okay, you find that next year we'll be talking of a totally different scenario, right? But whatever good suggestions or solutions have been proposed, let them be implemented now so that come next year we should be able to say, we dealt with this, now we're dealing with new challenges. Yeah.
Implementation indeed is the key that would transform not only our energy sector, but ensure that there is consistent and sufficient supply. And of course, key issues emanating from our conversation today include, consideration of some of the key technological advances that can be considered to be able to ensure that this over-dependence on hydro generation does not become an issue when nature decides to flex its muscles, such as the current situation where we are with the drought. And of course, my guest has been engineer Brighton Mwaipopo, who was here from Twinkle Consulting Engineers. He serves as a technical expert at the particular firm, and he was providing his alternative solutions to what can be used to be able to address the challenges that Zambia's energy sector faces. The name is Wenson Mavoro. Thank you for watching The People's Space, and remember to click on that subscription button on our YouTube page so that you do not miss any of the new episodes that we keep on bringing that are full of meaningful conversation with regards Zambia's fiscal and economic social governance. See you next time. Thank you for watching.